This is week two, the Nile River Valley, the story of Moses. The story of Moses starts at the Nile River, where his mother puts him among the reeds in the water in a desperate attempt to save his life. And ironically, the same Pharaoh who wanted the babies to be killed is now the one whose family saves baby Moses from the water and raises him as an Egyptian, as a Pharaoh's family member. Moses grows up and realizes later that he's actually Hebrew, and he re-engages with his sister and his mother. Because of this change of identity, he starts to despise the injustice of the Hebrew people. Notice it took his realizing that he's one of them or that they're one of him in order for him to change his mind toward the injustice that's happening. He ends up killing a slave master and then he runs away. His running away is about a lack of identity, of not knowing what to do with himself anymore. But he does run away and he gets married and he tries to forget about his troubles in Egypt. But then he encounters God in a burning bush, which we'll talk about more next week. And God tells him to go back to his life, to finish, to atone for his sin, and to complete the freedom work that he's been called to. God tells Moses to tell Pharaoh to let my people go. We've often been told that Moses is not a good speaker or that he has a speech impediment, but I think the text is telling us that he'd forgotten his native language. It's part of his narrative of leaving the whole past behind. His time away, getting married, has made him forget. It's made him forget who he is. So he brings Aaron as a translator, his long lost brother Aaron. It's not a surprise that the first plague is blood in the Nile because of the lifeblood that the Nile was in ancient Egypt. Water to drink and to clean ourselves, to wash our clothes. The water is where we find fish. And it's where the animals gather. It's where we get the mud that makes the bricks for the great pyramids of Giza. It's where we grew papyrus, which is the way that we were able to write things down on paper. When the water's pulled back from the Nile, the river beds left behind were excellent places for them to grow their crops. The Nile was the basis for their sustained life for thousands of years. So it's no wonder that the first plague would happen there. The issue to letting the Hebrew people go was referred to as the hardening of Pharaoh's heart. In a world filled with clay, clay could do many things until it was hard. And so this mental model was the way that they talked about Pharaoh being intransigent, saying that his heart had been hardened. Mental health professionals today now sometimes talk about rock brain thinking, which is when we get rid is when we get rigid about ideas in our heads and continue to double down on them. It sometimes takes an act of God to get us to think about another path. One such rock brain thinking for me was how I had villainized the pharaohs of Egypt from these stories. It was so much easier to make other people our oppressive enemies. But being in their culture, when I was in Egypt, experiencing the awe and wonder of the great pyramids and the temples, the religion and the structures, meeting the Christians who were Coptics in Egypt now, I realized that I had made them villains in my story, which was told in a certain way so that me and God's people were the victims. And while this is a moment in which the worshipers of our God were oppressed, each faith tradition, be they Jewish, Christian, and Muslim, have risen to power in the Middle East at various times in history, and each of them has been the same kind of ruler to make slaves and imprison those who thought differently and prayed differently than them when they rose to power. The point is, there are not good people and bad people. There are those with power and those without. In a world where some have power, they tend to keep humans making decisions that are good for those in power. And yet, when we share power, it's not only the death of rock brain thinking or the hardness of heart, but it also ensures that everyone thrives collectively because everyone has a seat at the table and everyone must be valued for their unique opinions and perspectives. Whether we're talking about Noah's Ark or the 10 plagues of Egypt or even the cross, God much prefers to teach us about liberation without violence, but also explains that violence is often a means to an end in Scripture. Whether we like that or not, whether we think that that actually represents God well, that's the way these stories have been told. Which is why Noah tries to warn people about the flood that's coming on God's behalf. That's why Jesus, the cross, says, God forgive them. They know not what they do. And before the plagues, Moses goes to Pharaoh and pleads, let my people go. And those words are a shared liberation, not only for the slaves in Egypt, but when we let captives be free, be who they are, well, we all win.